Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Hal Bradley. I would like to ask us, each and every one of you, that if you enjoyed these shows, please hit like, share, and subscribe after you view the show. Thank you very much.
Well, world, and welcome to another episode of the Crisis Victory Show. I'm Dr. Hal Bradley. I'm your senior host, and my co-host Pete Turner's in the background floating around somewhere. Hi, Pete. Good to see you, brother. And today we have Mitchell on the show, and Mitchell has an incredible story that I'm very, very anxious to share with this audience today. And, so many of us go through so many layers of crisis events and critical moments in our life. And what we need to do is to be able to hear from people like Mitchell that can walk you through segmented journeys of events that they have survived or people that they know have survived, and maybe give somebody out there in this audience today a humanitarian approach to whatever it is that has prompted you to watch these episodes and try to gain something as a result of the people we bring on the show. So without further ado, I'd like to put Mitchell on air. Mitchell, good morning, brother, and thank you for being on the show.
Good morning, Dr. Hal. I'm honored to be here and knowing your story and the book that we're going to talk about.
Yes.
There are two main things that I always throw out there because it's a love story, but also to me the entire book is built on sobriety and redemption. And
Yes.
And so for my father and my brother and my two daughters, and right now, which I didn't get to talk about too much yesterday with Peter, is my stepson is just lost, and it's just really a horrible thing to see him doing what he's doing. So I don't know. I experienced all of it when I was a kid growing up, and you think that you get to be an adult, and I entered into a ready-made family, and wow, the word addiction just comes from everywhere.
Mitchell, I'd like to say something at this point. I, too, have a child currently struggling with addiction, and it's extremely frightening. When you and I, we look to be about the same age. I'm 71, 72 later this year. And during our time, it was beer kegger parties and marijuana smoking and maybe LSD trips. But this stuff that these kids are on out there today, this stuff is taking lives. And I hope in your family's case that isn't the concern, but we'll find out as we get into this. And also, I'm very sorry to hear that, and I will pray for your stepson. I will.
I'll tell you, that's a very interesting thing because I always offer prayers to people, and you're the first guy in a long time that has actually offered prayers for me.
I mean it. It's my heart. And you got it, brother.
I'll get through this morning, Mal. Jeez.
Well, let's proceed with this, Mitchell. Let's talk about, first, I'd like to talk about the book, if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
I'd like to
yes.
introduce the material that the book is basically about and let our audience know what may generate them, and will probably generate them into wanting to get a copy of it and learning a little bit more. Your journey last night when Pete briefed me was very interesting to me. It really fits the profile of the Crisis Victory Show. So I'll be quiet for a minute, and I want you to describe your book, please.
So about 16 months ago, I took a body of work that I've been writing, some of it all my life and some of it recently. Sometimes you break out in spontaneous prayer or you ask for something. I receive words and I put them on paper, or I record them and put them on paper. And in this book, I think when you want people to really get engaged, the first thing you find out is in the first couple of pages is I thank my brother for introducing me to my wife. He was singing opera one night and he called me. I was working at the hospital. I was in respiratory medicine, and I went to go see him sing, and I met Darrell that night, and it changed my life forever. And it was quite a while before we started really seeing each other. It's just an amazing thing, because I'm thinking right now is that when I actually figured it out, she was so devious in her smile. It was just, I'm 17 years younger than my wife. And we've been together in May of this year. It'll be 50 years that we've actually been together.
Beautiful.
And I think about something that is so amazing because she picked me up to go see Led Zeppelin, or rather Leonard Skinner, I'm sorry, to the Greek Theater in a VW bus. Okay.
That's perfect.
I mean, it's like my very casually liberal wife was in for a conservative awakening with her new Jewish buddy. And so I'll tell you something, you know, I just popped into my mind as we're talking about this. The first time we all had dinner together, my father was a little incensed about this anyways, because he realized, you know, that she was this woman who's I'm young, so much younger than her. I try not to flip it around and say she's older. It just doesn't sound right. I'm 17 years younger. My brother and my father got into a yelling, screaming, walking around the house match at our first meeting together with my wife. And she says to me, "I don't know how you stayed." And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, my family was crazy. Your kids hated me. And I told Peter I was under a spell. I really, truly was. And so the book itself yes, it's a storytelling quest. It's written in poetry, which was just the easiest way for me to. It was so, because these words come to me. It's so different than writing prose and writing this big story. You condense everything down sometimes to one page. And so we had a love story. I mean, and we still do. My wife and I, when you look at me, and I'm either a month older than you or a month younger, because I'll be 72 in August.
October.
Yeah.
You're older.
Oh my gosh. Oh shit. Great. I get to be older than you.
Yeah. I love that.
Is, you know, to sit in a living room and have this young woman come out and call this woman I'm just about starting to date mom. And then she leaves. And I said, "Is that your daughter?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Is that your real daughter?" And she just laughed at me. And I took out my driver's license. And I said, "Hey, I'm 21. And it's just been a ride ever since. And
beautiful.
She went through the loss of my father with me. It was really, really difficult because my father was such a wonderfully loving, hard man with so many stories and things. And the stories that he told were stories to make him look better and feel better. And I never saw him that way. He was my dad.
Is that what piqued you into putting together a book? Was that one of the primary factors that motivated your direction to write this book?
One of the things I wrote about and that really put this together, they're not in here because I was, you know, told through the publishing world, a book of poetry is 120 to 130. That's about it. I have a group of pieces that I started writing about 30 years ago called White Stone Graves and Black Granite Walls, because I started experiencing a lot of people that I knew that were only 2 or 3 years older than me. They had post-traumatic stress. They'd been to Vietnam, you know, things that happened to them in the military. And I mean, you would get a great sense out of this. And again, I have a piece called The Cot. For until I moved out of the house, if we went on a camping trip, I slept on an army cot and I ate rations. My father had buddies. Yeah, my father had MREs. He got them all the time from his war buddies, and my father was in the 256 Coastal Artillery Group in New Guinea, and he was also, you know, on his DD-214. I guess he's a wireman, so I guess he helped with communications, which is, I guess, pretty dangerous.
When was your father in the military? What years? Was that World War II?
So 1938 to 1940, and then of course 1941 to late 1945.
Yeah. My father was an MP in World War II and was actually one of the MPs that you see on film at the Nuremberg trials in the courtroom.
Oh my! Wow.
Yes, it's what an he was also there when they liberated. I believe it was Auschwitz. The next day, he brought the news reporters to come in and photograph and film the death camp. So yeah, you know, both of our parents experienced so much during that era. My era, of course, was the Vietnam era. I went in 71 to 74. I had a brother who was shot in Quezon Valley in 69. And He survived. He was at the Bremerton Naval Hospital, and I remember walking into that ward and seeing him and all those young men, all with various combat-related injuries, and I became so angry and so mad that I dropped out of school, went to a community college right then and got my GED, took my oath at the age of 16, and 2 weeks after I was 17, I was in basic training. So, we were all impacted for whatever reason or purpose. And when you brought your father up, that was the trigger to my memories of that, because we had 6 uncles besides my father that were in that war throughout various campaigns, Pacific, South Pacific, Europe campaign, all of it. And I remember well the impact decades and decades later. And as I shared with you before the show, when I was captured back in 2003, I had been a contractor at that time now for a number of years. And when we got rescued, to this day, I still wake up some nights and I'm still in that damn jungle. It's just amazing how things linger. So what I'm building up to is when men like yourself, like myself, or women, when we write books, whether it's in poetic form or whether it's in graphic form of detail like my books are, it's so important to be able to create something that others can identify, discern, and maybe start a path and a road to recovery themselves. It's just sometimes life is so hard, but what defines us is how we pick ourselves back up in that moment of duress. A year and a half ago, I was walking down the hall to commit suicide. In 2003, there were 7 of us honored at the VA hospital in Seattle that had all been captured and tortured on foreign soil. And I am now the last one living. And 2 years ago, in November, I lost Captain Robert, I'll leave it at that, to suicide. He called me up to say goodbye. And I'm the last one of us alive today. And so we all have something that we need to, if you will, release and carry. Pete is like me. Pete is also a PTSD victim. Both of us have spent a lot of extensive time outside the wire in combat-related or undercover-related environments that were high-level and dangerous. And we sometimes we got to put ourselves in check, and we got to go to another resource, which is what I'm hoping your book is going to end up doing, Mitchell, for somebody that hears your interview today. It's so important. It's just so important to show survivorship of whatever we have gone through. And that was my motivation for having you on the show when Pete and I talked about you, Mitchell, and I love you for it, brother, because there's a lot of hurting people out here right now that are really dealing with a lot of dysfunctional lifestyle circumstances, because everything is constantly changing. And some people, we are not designed to change as fast as we are being required to change because of the current state of affairs globally and here in our own country right now. So that being said, please continue on. I apologize for the interruption.
No, to learn about that, there's so many things that you brought up. To see my father in the way that he was, 99 times out of 100, when there was something wrong, I was seeing my father's anger.
Yes.
And only a few times did I see my father in the arms of my mother, shaking and I was always told to leave when that happened. And it was something that I never understood. And my sisters made fun of my father, and my father's family made fun of my father. And I never could. I just, however, I loved my father. I know that my brother loved my father. Just things that come to my mind. So if you don't mind, if I just kind of fire off things,
perfect.
I'm on the Bay Bridge, and it's 1991, and I'm taking my father to go see the 49ers. And right before we go through the tunnel, he looks at me and he says, Mitchie, I destroyed your brother's life. And I was like, oh my God. He said, I watched a show last night, and I had to tell you that I watched something on TV about child abuse, and I have abused your brother, and I have to find a way to fix this. And my father had 8 years of some kind of a real relationship with my brother before he passed away. And it was like maybe his way of saying to me the things that I went through, because I was not only the prince of the household, I was the watcher.
Yes.
I had to watch it all happen. I lived in a storm.
Yes.
When it was calm, wow, it was really amazing.
Interesting. I don't know if you know this part about me or not yet either, but I've got 26 years as a certified hospice counselor. I received my chaplaincy in 2018 in hospice ministry and started in federal prison. I was terminally ill back in when was that? 95, I believe. I left one federal prison. My liver was shutting down. They figured I had 2 or 3 months of life left to live. And I volunteered for an experimental drug at Springfield Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri. And here I am over 30 years later. But the point was this: when I was in there, they decided to start a program using 11 of us inmates to be certified and trained in hospice care to aid and assist our fellow prisoners through the dying process. And I completed the 3-month course. And in the course of the 2.5 years I was there, I took 24 federal prisoners through the actual dying process. And that was where I completed my seminary, was up in those death rooms. So I'd be sitting there monitoring a patient who was going through final stage of life. And I was doing all of my studies. Assemblies of God was what I followed to get my ordination complete. And God puts us in different places for specific purpose. So later in life, we realize, why we were in that part of the journey, which is kind of what you're describing right now, why your father unloaded to you at that specific moment. I can assure you, brother, as a hospice counselor for damn near 3 decades, I've seen it all. I've heard it all. I understand about closure at the end of life, as we know we're coming to it, approaching it. And it's a wonderful thing, because you sitting there and allowing him to download that which was travesty in his life, and his guilt that he's feeling, and the need to release that, and having the right person at the right moment for him to be able to get through that. And I really commend you for it, because it's not an easy part to play when somebody is sharing something so intimate and so private and so self-devastating, if you will. So that tells me a lot about you, Mitchell, because people don't reach out to just anybody when they're dealing or transcending into a situation of releasing something as intimate as that kind of a conversation. And one thing I wanted to tell you about your wife. Last week I married a couple here in my house, and I've done weddings for decades. And I remember turning to this younger couple, and I'm explaining to them that in the eye of God, the two become as one. They complete one another and fulfill one another. And it has nothing to do with age. I was married to a woman that was a lot younger than me when I was 50. She was in her 20s. And I fell in love with her. I married her. And I married her because I loved her. And I saw a future with that person. But, when you talk about your wife, the 17 years apart in the age thing, the two of you became as one in the sight of God. He didn't count that calendar. What he counted was the ability, if you will, to manifest 2 entities into one symbiotic entity that he aligns with and recognizes with. And you took an oath to him when you joined in that love. As we know in the Gospel of St. John, the 1st chapter, 7th verse, it says, "For God is love." God is love. So when we end up falling in love with somebody else, we know God is inclusive in that segment of the relationship that we have now been blessed to have and to be able to hold and maintain future memories of. And I really, really liked that, how eloquently you explained the difference in the age moment about you and your wife. And then it was like, it's the norm, because to you, it's the norm. And
I wake up every single day.
Yeah.
And I make coffee and take it up to my wife.
I love that.
And I there's a prayer called the Modeh, and it is a prayer of renewal, and you do it when you wake up, when you're still laying in bed. And the Modeh Ani basically is a recitation of a prayer thanking God for taking my soul at night and cleansing it and bringing it back to me in the morning. So I do it twice. I do it first for my wife and then for me. And sometimes I'll come upstairs and I'll bring coffee. She goes, "I'm still here."
Isn't that beautiful?
And yeah, I mean, I'm 71, so anybody else can do the math.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, it's my wife Darrell wanted, and she never would have been able to have children with me, and when I was 35 years old when our first grandson came, and here he is. He's 40 right now, and he sends me information for Peter from yesterday about these different types of headphones that he thinks I should get because he does sound room at these big, huge conferences, and he's played the piano his whole life and everything. But it's just like he's sending me these messages. But the defining moment in my life was that Darrell and I were inseparable. I don't talk about it. In fact, nobody in other than my inner circle has never knew that after I saw Darrell for about 10 months, this woman on 3 North captured me. She was dark and mysterious and beautiful, and somehow I was enthralled with her. And she said if I wanted to go out with her, that I could not. It would have to be an exclusive date. And I thought, okay, here's this young woman. She too was 8 years older than me, because everybody in the hospital was older than me. And I actually broke up with Darrell.
Wow.
And I drive by that park and that bench, and I feel that day. I think about it right now, and I feel it. And about 2 months later, I knew that wasn't going to work. And after having a perfect time being at the hospital, I got sick. And I had a fever for 5 days in a row. And my brother called Darrell and said, "Can you just bring Mitchell something? I'm in San Francisco." And she came over, and then the spell it's just always been there.
God has his way, brother.
Yeah.
God has his way.
I think to myself that God brought my wife to me.
Yes.
My parents were crazy that she was who she was. And then my parents needed my wife. My wife knew how to take care of my parents when they got older. Yes. and knew the things that they were going through. And so she brings this, she inspires me all the time. And I've written hundreds of pieces for her, and I've read every single thing I've ever written has been read to my wife. It makes her crazy sometimes, but
she's your editor.
Yeah. Well, she's a lot of stuff, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I love that.
But she knows the pain that I've gone through, and she just, she just holds me when I'm not myself.
So let me ask you this, Mitchell. With regard to the book that you've recently completed, it's published now, correct? It's out there? Okay. What is the primary focus of your message to the world regarding the book that you have created? What are you trying to tell the world through your writings?
I think the biggest thing for women, I want to start there. Okay. When you look at those 11 pages, they're actually from a poetic book I wrote specifically for my oldest daughter. She's only seen a couple of pieces of it, but it's called The Blood Diary, and it's called My Voice. And the reason it's called My Voice, The Blood Diaries, it's my voice telling her story.
I like that.
And some of it she's not happy with, some of it she is. But I want people to realize that my middle daughter, Robin, shall say her name, who we received her son when he was 3 years old because she was a meth addict. And 5 years later, I bought Jeremy a pair of rollerblades, and Robin decided she needed to go rollerblading with him. And he had one day a week that he spent with her. And they went rollerblading, and God took her and just threw her on the ground and just broke her trochanter and her femur.
Wow.
And she was 33 years old. And the doctor came in. His name was Dr. Apple, and he sat with her for over an hour until we got there. He did surgery that night, and that was the last day she used.
Wow.
She
Wow.
found her God, and when she's over, we pray. And she's 29 years clean and sober. And
Praise God. What a great story.
it is. And her older sister, who, I was not present during that time, and knowing how volatile I would have been, I don't know what would have happened. She was 14 when she was taken with a gun and a knife and raped, and they also used the gun inside of her.
Yes.
Okay. And she became an addict. But she was this beautiful person. She was so bright and so cheery, and then she would fall into this deep depression and just could do cocaine for days, right? It's like, you go out and you do a line, and she does 100 lines. And then, so my daughter was actually married for a long time to my brother-in-law's brother. Okay. I mean, it's like I'm my own grandpa. Yeah. They met at my sister's wedding, and they got married, and then they began to torture each other. It was just a match made in heaven. I go out one day with Gordon, and they're having a really hard time. And I said, "What the hell is going on?" And he said, and I'm thinking, "Are you gay? Are you having an affair?" And he says, I'm a 15-year heroin addict.
Oh my God.
And she's doing cocaine and alcohol. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's a nightmare. Looking for a place to happen. Holy man.
Yeah. And then they both got clean and sober, and they had Julian. And within a year of having Julian, she suffered, as I went and I read everything I could, that something beautiful in your life can trigger post-traumatic stress. Yeah. And for basically, for over 30 years, she was in that darkness. I picked her up one day, and I took her to the hospital. She was non-responsive. I drove her to the hospital, and my wife came and met me there. And the doctor came out. He said, I think she's going to be all right. And I said, wow. And he said, she's very well practiced, isn't she? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, she's 0.51. I said, well, okay. He goes, no, 0.08. She's 6 times the limit. And she weighs 90 pounds. I mean, she should have been gone, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I saved her multiple times. Of course, I never did. And she was a cutter.
I understand the statement.
But she's been sober for 9 years.
Beautiful.
I would love one day, and you will know when I say this, especially for the people that you've been around, instead of screaming at God, I would love one day for her to accept God, because she believes that no God would ever let happen what happened to her.
Brother, in his season, the awareness will reveal itself unto her. I've seen this countless times of people that have survived. Oh my God. I mean, immense and immeasurable travesties. Like I told you earlier, Mitchell, I spent 15 years of my life directly tied to the Sinaloa drug cartel. I've seen and been around, and sadly, allegedly responsible for actions that are indescribable. I mean, literally indescribable. In my books that I wrote about one man's war against the cartels, They are action adventure novels, but these stories that are in those books are fabricated through many years of sitting in U.S. embassies in various countries when special forces teams would come in, or other guys that were in the intelligence field, like I was at that time, would come in, and we would sit down away from everybody else because we're not like everybody else. And we would share that which we could, that wasn't classified, but more like a downloading thing. And the reason I'm telling you this is that over the course of those years, I saw amazing healing and recovery, not only for myself, but for the brothers and sisters that are in harm's way and outside that wire every single day, that you and I and Pete and so many others get to sit here in comfort and safety. And so sometimes it's really important to be able to assess. When you made the comment earlier about a good memory can trigger a bad thing. Absolutely right. It doesn't have good and bad. What triggers have are something of familiarity that resonates within us, that takes us back to a moment in time that we survived. Your daughter, her journey now, praise God, by the way, she, by people that I have seen, and I've been a pastor for many years now, and that sit there and they basically say, I don't know God, or I deny God. The moment they bring it up tells me that they do know God, because they wouldn't be having those thoughts if they in fact didn't. What they are is they are confused about God. They don't know how to deny or accept God. But what will happen is they will transition through another episode in life that will reveal to them these truths. Mine came October 19th, 1994 at 3:30 in the afternoon. I just got sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. I was put in a holding cell, had a contract put on my life right in a courtroom in front of the judge and agents and everything. And my wife served me divorce papers the day before. And I remember sitting in that cell, and I just couldn't take another blow. And I dropped to my knees, physically dropped to my knees. And I looked up in the ceiling of that cell and I said, God, if you are real, I can't do this. And in that moment, my cell door was open. An inmate walked in, knelt on knees on one side of me, put a hand on my shoulder and started praying. Within seconds, Mitchell, another one came in on the other side of me. And they were just praying, incessantly praying. And I felt the chains and the shackles and everything, all of the anger, all of the grief, everything I was carrying, it instantly dissolved. And brother, that was 30 years ago. And I smile every day of my life. I was assassinated here in 2020, right in my own backyard. I got hit by a cartel contract killer that found me, took me out. And in the last knife stroke into my brain, because I was bleeding out and getting ready to leave this world, I felt my death was within seconds. And it was just amazing. I felt an encapsulation of a love I can't even describe to this day. I've seen it in the faces of some of the people I've taken through the dying process as a hospice counselor. Now I understand it. And the reason I tell you that is because God will give a specific purpose for a moment that we will realize that this carries on. It does not end when the flesh dies. He tells us in the Bible, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb. Absolutely correct. But that moment of death, I knew I was going to be gone within a minute or two. I figured that was the max I had left. And the guy that was sitting there stabbing me in the head, he released me because I had gone limp. So he figured I was dead. And I remember feeling so loved and so welcomed and not alone. And you remember that scripture in Revelation that says, for the former things pass away? I understand it. Everything here earthly didn't matter in that moment. I knew that I was evolving into something even greater. And I carry that love in my heart. And when I came out of that coma from that incident at the hospital, the first thing I did was think of the man that was sent to kill me. And I had love for him and I forgave him. Brother, these are confirmations of the truisms of what God is, in fact. God is love. God is love. I came up in horrific lifestyle. I mean, I've seen things that will never leave my mind ever, but I survived those things. And as a result, in later years of life, I've acquired a wisdom as a result of that. And when I go to a trap house, or if I go to a homeless camp, which I've been doing for decades, and I'm sitting there in front of the fire on a log that night, they open up to me because they know that I've been there and done that. They can tell within seconds that I'm not just some pastor down there judging them or trying to convert them. I'm not. I'm there to put an arm around a shoulder that hasn't been hugged in a long time. I'm there to share something far greater than that which we are. and that is the love of God through Jesus Christ. And I don't beat people to death with the Bible. I don't go out and preach on the street corners. My doctoral dissertation took me 3 years to complete, and I was doing outreach services under Bishop LaFall in Seattle before he would sign off. And I would walk the streets and work the streets way into the early morning hours and coming across people in the craziest situations. But there was purpose and intent. And my dissertation could have been done in 2 years, but my bishop wanted that 3rd year. And he's the one that reordained me when I came out of federal prison, and then 3 years later installed me as senior pastor of my own church, which I had in a town not far from here. So that's why I said the comment about in God's season, your daughter will identify, brother. All of a sudden, it's going to come like a light switch, and she's going to get consumed with that immeasurable, unspeakable, tough, unfamiliar joy that can only happen in the moment that God decides to make it happen and manifest within us. I look at you and I can sense that you're a man of God. He gives us discernment, brother. We can pick up on one another if we truly walk in the way, the truth, and the life of Christ. We do. We have become a new creation. 2 Corinthians 5:17. You know it well. I know you do. And it's really interesting. And what happens is, well, people will see the show today, Mitchell, and they're going to reverberate on that. They're going to go, oh, I align with that. I feel that. And there we go. We've now sowed the seed. That is the purpose and intent of the show. Well, listen, Mitchell, we're down to like 1 or 2 minutes here. And I want to give the last couple of minutes to you to wrap up. I also want to tell you before we get off the air that I send my love to you and your wonderful family. I can relate so well, as so many of us can, about having someone we love and care about that's struggling with either addiction or sexual assault or whatever it is that they're having to survive and go through at this time. I have a family member myself, I told you that earlier, that's deeply involved in hard narcotics, and I worry every day whether I'm going to get a knock on the door from the police or not. You just don't know. But what we do know is we can, when we do get to have them in front of us, we can hug them and we can tell them we love them, and we can show it and express it and never, ever judge them. Rather be that rock that they know that they can come to without facing a judgment call. And with that being said, brother, I'm going to close my part and let you take us out. You want to final thoughts for my audience, please?
I do. Yeah, wow. You made me think about Mark, my son. I haven't spoken with him since April. He did some really terrible things, and I asked him to give me a call when he was clean and sober. And and I just couldn't do it anymore, and neither could my wife. And it was so difficult. And I think about seeing him, and we've learned a lot of things about him, and apparently my wife's second husband. I'm my wife's third husband, and we've been together for almost 50 years. So, and it's just the most blessed thing. But
I love
apparently he would beat Mark, and when nobody was around, and he would strap him, and I feel like I'm the only man in his life that can take that hatred out on, and so I'm okay with that. I don't mind that he does it in a way that I wish he wasn't doing it so much to himself. And
what did Christ say, Mitchell? He said, be the example. And that's why I said, when my son comes through the door, whatever condition, I put my arm around him, I look him in the eye, and I tell him how much I love him, because I'm grateful for every moment I get, and pray every day that he doesn't end up dying. I have to deal with them. So I know.
This is Friday. This is the Sabbath.
Yes.
I always, I light candles with my wife on Friday night. She joins me, and I go to church with her. She'll go to temple with me. And I told Peter that just in terms of closing here, with all of her children being where they are, and the grandchildren, we all put them all in parochial school. I had to learn about Jesus in order to help them do their homework.
Of course.
And so I always tell them, he was a Jewish scholar. He was a Torah scholar. He taught his disciples the Torah. He didn't teach them Christianity. It didn't exist.
No. Exactly right.
Talking about who we are.
The Jews, brother, are the chosen. They are the chosen by God. How can you argue that? Even in our Christian studies, we identify and recognize. And I love my brothers that are Jews and my sisters that are Jews. I absolutely adore them. And I got to tell you one real quick, Martin, then I'll shut up. But when I was in federal prison, I would be working in the chapel, and I remember this one guy had a rabbi that would come in, and later him and I became best friends even after prison. But his rabbi would say, "Oh, you're trying to convert him into Christianity." And I said, "Why would I ever try to convert one of God's chosen? God chose the Jew." Boy, that rabbi and I became like best pals. You know, it was just so cool.
Alavai, it's a good thing.
It's a good thing. And, you know, it was the truth, and we felt it. And I love Teddy Bear, you know, or Ted Williams. I called him Teddy Bear. That was his nickname. And yeah, just a great memory. Thank you for having that come back in my life there because of you.
You
ahead.
said something that was so important in this book, in those 11 pages,
Yes.
about my daughter.
Yes.
Is I cannot tell you how many times, and people do it because it's part of our vernacular, that she would say, "Oh God," or "God, this is horrible," without ever realizing what she's doing is she's pulling him down to her. And I pray for her all the time. And there's a part where in the book it says you need to pray, because she's talking in her head to the smiling girl who has been gone for years. Yeah. And the smiling girl has come and brought light into her life. She says, "Let's pray." And she says, "I don't pray." And the smiling girl inside her says, "Yes, we do. We do pray. We pray. We go outside." And she hasn't been outside, and she goes outside and sees the world for the first time. And I want her to see that world.
Wow. Beautiful, Mitchell. Beautiful. I get it. I get it completely. Well, brother, this wraps up our show today. Mitchell, I want to send my love to you and your family with all my sincerity. I want to thank you, sir, for taking the time to share your story. I am looking forward to getting a copy of that book and researching what you've written. And again, and I want to thank my co-host, Pete Turner, for finding you. Because Pete, thank you, brother Pete. When Pete got a hold of me and we talked about you, he told me how you're going to absolutely love this guy. You're going to really enjoy him. And boy, he hit it on the head, because I do love you, brother. And I thank you.
I feel that, Hal. I mean, I just...
Yeah. How can you not?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm so honored to be with you, with your life experiences, and they're so different. And we want to share the one thing. I have to say this. You brought it up. Whenever I talk to somebody who's having a problem with their husband or wife,
yes,
I ask them, "When's the last time you danced to your wedding song?" Beautiful. And it is the most amazing thing. And I say, your job is to bring light to your wife's soul so that together you can bring heaven to earth. You made a covenant with God and a covenant with your wife. And of course, in Hebrew, it's the ketubah. It is a marriage agreement.
Yes, it is.
And it was so amazing that my wife, I had a rabbi who was my lifetime rabbi since I was 5 years old.
Wow.
Marry me in the temple on a Saturday evening after sundown. The cantor refused to come because my wife was Christian, but it was amazing. I have to leave you with this because it is so important. I had a lifetime friend, J.J. Conovet, who died just a couple of years ago. He passed away. Yes. He said Mass in St. Peter's Square with the Pope. And this is a man who eventually got out of the priesthood and wanted to have a life. He ended up with a son and a wife. And he called me in 2013, just a few years before he passed away. And he said, "I'm going to be in your town, Peterstown." He said, "I want to know if you'll let me do something." I said, "Well, I want to see you." He says, "You cannot see me unless I get to marry you. I went to your wedding. Now I want to marry your wife. I want to do a Christian wedding for your wife."
Wow.
And I had friends come to my home. Yeah. And we had 40 people here. And we, for the third time, renewed our vows together with God and my friend JJ. And it was just to
how perfect.
People don't understand when you let that light into your life, how much it can really change you. And I said this to Peter, and just I keep hearing it in my head when I get angry. Show up like God sent you, speak like God is talking, and everything that I'm feeling that's anger just starts to go away. And I don't
does.
talk that. The anger just doesn't speak. I can't let my anger speak anymore.
For God is love, brother. For
Yeah.
God is love. All right, gentlemen.
Thank you, man.
you, Mitchell. Love you, brother. God bless you, and God be with us both and our families and our struggles. And everybody out there in the audience, thank you for taking the time to enjoy this episode. And Mitchell, I made a new brother today.
Thank you.
Okay, folks. Well, that wraps up another episode today. And I'd like to take this moment to thank each and every one of you for taking your time to catch our show. Now, if you like these shows, I would ask that you would please hit like, share, and subscribe. It's so important to us that we get these messages out, and we understand that these are graphic, almost toxic interviews. But, you know, this is the kind of impact that we feel is needed in order to make sure that people understand the significance of the problems that we are confronted within our own country and around the globe. So I'm going to say at this time that I love you all. God bless you all. Hasta luego, y vaya con Dios, and go Victors.